but I want to talk about an aspect of love that we don't tend to associate with love necessarily. And I believe that love looks like discipline. And this is kind of a thing for me. I think about it a lot. It comes into the way that I parent my children. It comes into the way that I lead and I mentor people around here. Love looks like discipline, and it's totally biblical, and that's what we're going to talk about tonight. So. When I was a kid, there was like one verse that my dad made us memorize. That's the one. Vicky's got it. So it's in Ephesians. I don't know. Let's not put it up unless you've got it. Okay. Yeah, let's not put it up. I'll say it to you from memory because I know it. Because my dad made me repeat it over and over and over again. And I'm thankful now, but I promise you I never imagined ever that I would do a sermon on this particular verse because as a kid I was, a little frustrated about the whole thing. But anyways, it's Ephesians 6, and it just says, "Children, obey your parents in the Lord, honor your father and mother, which is the first commandment with a promise, and it will go well with you, and you will live long on the earth." And then the part that we always got to say back to him was, "Fathers, don't provoke your children to anger, but instead bring them up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord." So, it was like this back and forth thing, and we'd be like, "Well, you made me mad, so I don't have to listen to you, and so you're not doing it right." But the part that I felt like Holy Spirit was highlighting to me when I woke up this morning was the "do not provoke your children to anger. Instead, bring them up in the discipline and the instruction of the Lord." And the reason that I think that the Holy Spirit is highlighting that is because most of us did not have parents that didn't provoke us to anger, and they didn't bring us up in the discipline and the instruction of the Lord. There are a few people probably that did have parents that disciplined in such a way as to not harden their children's hearts. But I think most of our parents, they didn't really know how to discipline. They didn't know how to discipline so that the child felt loved, and so the child just felt hurt, angry, isolated, etc. Because a lot of our parents, instead of using correct discipline, they would manipulate us or control us to get us to do what they wanted us to do. So things like guilt tripping, right? We're talking right now in Inner Healing Month about moms and dads in the School of Ministry, so this is kind of at the tip of my brain. And so we know that discipline is supposed to actually cause a child to feel loved, but most of the time it actually causes distance between parents and children. But that wasn't God's intention. So in Ephesians, so I'm kind of a Bible geek. This thing it's just too high for me. I'm just going to hold my notes. All right. Anyways, in Ephesians, the word discipline, so I like to look things up in the Greek because I think that when the Bible was translated from Greek to English, I think we lost a lot of the meaning in some of the key words in the scriptures, because sometimes when you go and you look in the Greek, you realize that what the author intended us to know, we totally miss when we read today. So, for example, if I just say the word football, it brings to mind a lot of different things, right? So you would picture a football game. You might picture the football. You might picture a football player. You might think about different plays that a team might do. You might have a memory of your high school football team or cheerleading or whatever, right? So we all have memories and associations with the word football. And it's kind of like that in the Bible. So when the New Testament was written, the words that they used in there had associations for the readers that were originally reading them. Does that make sense? So you would say football, and everybody would know everything that you're talking about. You wouldn't just think of a ball that's oblong shape. Does that make sense? So I like to look at all the different meanings of the words, and so I'll try not to get too geeky, and I'm not actually going to speak Greek, but I just want us to look at what the word discipline means in the New Testament. So for Ephesians, when it says bring them up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord, what they're actually saying is Train up a child so that they mature and realize their full potential, which does include administering punishment. But when we hear the word discipline, we think of manipulation, guilt trips, timeouts, being beaten, angry parents, right? And basically the child whose heart gets hardened. And so when we read that God is telling parents to discipline us, we immediately put God into the category of our parents who we're keeping out here trying not to be hurt by. That makes sense to everybody. So instead of embracing the idea of discipline, we have now gone into a place where we're trying to protect ourselves from discipline. And we take that childhood association with discipline and we bring it up into our adulthood. And the problem with that is that the Bible is also very clear that as adults we need to also be disciplined. So it starts off where God instructs parents to discipline us in a way that trains up a child so that they mature and realize their full potential, which does also include administering punishment. But God wants to do the same thing with us as adults, but because punishment is something that we don't want, we reject what he wants to do in us, not understanding that in order to receive our full salvation, we have to be disciplined. So we're going to talk some more about that. All right, Hebrews. Let's get Hebrews up there. Hebrews 12, starting in verse 4. All right. So this is just after the author of Hebrews is talking about the great heroes of the faith and how we are basically to strive to be like them. So he starts off by saying, you have not yet resisted to the point of shedding blood in your striving against sin. Okay. We all have grown up, most of us in here, right? And so even though as children we're trying not to disobey our parents, so as adults we are also trying not to sin. But some of us are fighting that fight harder than others. But that's what we're going for, and that's what he's asking us to do. All right. We have not yet resisted the point of shedding blood in your striving against sin, and you have forgotten the exhortation which is addressed to you as sons. The reason we're not doing so well in our fight against sin is because we've forgotten that he gave us this encouragement as sons and daughters. My son and daughters, do not regard lightly the discipline of the Lord, nor faint when you are reproved by him. Okay, we're going to hold there for a minute, because there's 3 words in there that mean a lot more in here than they do to us. Okay, so the first one is reprove. Reprove, okay, is it still up there? Okay, good. He reproves us. Okay, what does that mean? Who knows? Corrects us. Yeah, but do you know that in the Greek there's actually 2 different forms of reprove in that particular word? One is for children and one is for adults. I know, it's crazy. So when he reproves us, so for children it means training and education which cultivates mind and morals, which is good. That's good for kids, right? They should have training that changes their mind and makes their morals right. Fathers were supposed to be doing this for you. The question is did they? Or did they just make an enemy out of you with their way of discipline? Was discipline actually love? Did it look like love in your life? Is it something that you embraced and grew up then with an incredible mind and morals that are part of who you are that then help you not to sin? All right, for adults, reprove. When he reproves us, it is a cultivating of the soul. It's a cultivating of the mind, the will, and the emotions. And reproving also corrects mistakes and curbs passions. So that's a lot for one little word. So let's just put that one in context real fast. My son, do not regard lightly the discipline of the Lord, nor faint when you are reproved by him. So for us, when don't faint when he cultivates your mind, will, and your emotions, when he corrects your mistakes and curbs your passions. Next word we're going to look at is faint. Oh, no, hang on. Did that not make it into my notes? It didn't. Shoot. Well, faint basically means to let go. So don't let go of your faith and your relationship with him when he is trying to cultivate your mind, your will, and your emotions. So one of the things that faint means is like when you're holding a plow and you're plowing, that would be to let go of the plow. So what happens for us sometimes, because we have such a bad experience with discipline, is that when we receive discipline, we just let go of the game, turn around, and walk the other way. So instead of embracing what he is trying to do in us, we just give up. Or we get angry and we respond to God in the way that we've always responded to our parents, and we make him out to be the enemy when all he's trying to do is cultivate our mind, our will, and our emotions, correct our mistakes, and curb our passions. Those would be the sinful passions, I think, in that case, right? So he's trying to bring us into maturity and into a sinless nature and into receiving the crown of life, which we're going to talk about later. And we, instead, are looking at him like the enemy when things aren't going our way. I know, it's crazy. Okay, and then the other one, we're going to look at discipline in this sense, which is very similar to the other one. But the discipline in this sentence here is this. It's the rearing of a child. And in the Greek, this is like what I was talking about with the football, right? So in the Greek, when they were going to read this is everything that they knew this word meant. Discipline is the training of the physical and mental faculties, so physical body and your mind, in such a way as to produce a broad, enlightened, and mature outlook. I'm going to just read that again because I just want you to follow my process here and just think about what this means for you. If you accept discipline from the Lord, this is what he is trying to produce in you. It's the training of physical and mental faculties in such a way as to produce a broad, enlightened, and mature outlook, combined with maximum cultural development. So as we receive his discipline, our culture is developing into his culture. That's a big deal. And this, I just want to come back again and again and again to the thought that we really believe that discipline is punishment. We associate those two words so closely that because discipline has always been so painful, we don't embrace what he is trying to do in us. When we are misunderstood as children, now, like, don't get me wrong, kids have to explore. They have to test. It's part of their mental development and their physiological development and all of these things. But when there is either wrong discipline or no discipline, the child is not protected. The child is not safe, and they're not safe to mature because the one that is supposed to help them through the process of whatever mistake it is that they made, it becomes separate. And then the child has to build up, instead of a closer relationship, they have to build up walls of self-protection. And the problem with that is that when we build up walls of self-protection, they don't just come down just with like, oh, they're up with you and they're down with you. They're just up. And so we've got, all of us have these walls around our hearts that not only stop us from being able to receive the discipline of the Lord, but they also stop us from being able to receive love from people around us, or love from God. And we equate love with that fuzzy worm feeling that we get maybe in worship, or when someone prays for us, or maybe he just speaks to us and says, I love you. And we get sort of that warm feeling where we just feel alive and wonderful. And that's great. But that is just like a tiny little bit of what love actually is. And we have such high walls that the feeling of love is really supposed to be produced by the closeness of relationship. And what we get to do when we have these walls is he just kind of like reaches in real fast and just touches us like, hey, just so you know, I'm safe. And then maybe a couple weeks later, we're open enough that he just reaches in real quick and touches us and says, oh, I'm safe. And what he's trying to do is lure us into taking our walls down so that we begin to trust him and actually have an experience with what real love is, which is a relationship, a long-term relationship that is supposed to be producing maturity and character in us. And it's really up to us to give him permission to take these walls down. And what it looks like on a practical level is forgiving the people that hurt us. And like I said, it's Inner Healing Month in School of Ministry, and it's a really special time because we've all been hurt by people that were probably very well-intentioned, But as kids, we're just not so good at communicating sometimes what's really going on with us, and so we're misunderstood a lot of the time. And when we're misunderstood, we feel like we have to protect ourselves because it hurts to be misunderstood. And God, he doesn't misunderstand us, though. He knows all the areas in us that never matured because now they're hiding behind these walls. Because when there's nobody to lead you through the maturing process, that part of you just stays immature. It stays developed in babyland, and it never matures into adulthood. And we want to mature into adulthood because there is so much for us in the kingdom as adults. But we're really busy not expending our energy in the kingdom. We're really busy expending our energy protecting ourselves from the people that want to help us and from God. We're kind of like wounded, abused animals in that sense, and sometimes we run a little bit, but because we don't have the maturity and the character development, and what are some of these things that they said here? We haven't produced a broad, enlightened, and mature outlook. We haven't allowed him to produce a broad, enlightened, and mature outlook. So what happens is we run for a little while and we hit a wall, whether it's someone crosses us wrong or a circumstance comes up that we don't understand, or maybe someone just corrects us. And what we do is we do that thing that it says in Hebrews where we faint and we just let go and we turn around and we walk the other way. And then eventually later, if we're still really following him, he'll turn us back around again. But we've just lost so much time. And the reason we've lost so much time is because we're so busy trying to protect ourselves that we're forgetting that this discipline that he's trying to give us is supposed to stop us from needing to stop. I just want to go back again real quick to Hebrews. My son, do not regard lightly the discipline of the Lord, nor let go when you are corrected by him. And a lot of the times, the correction, it's coming just through your circumstances. And he's ready to walk you through those circumstances. And that is actually discipline. A parent walking his child through circumstances is discipline. Punishment is when they do something wrong and correction has to be brought. But sometimes discipline is just the instruction to grow up through circumstances that are hard. All right. Let's go into James 1. Consider it all joy, my brethren, when you encounter various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces endurance. And let endurance have its perfect result, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing. How many people have had this scripture quoted at them when everything is going wrong, and they're all like, no, really, consider it joy when everything in your life is upside down and you want to let go of the plow? But actually, I could have probably plucked out 50 scriptures easily. And this one in James isn't even about discipline. But that's what he does, right? He uses every circumstance in our lives to produce maturity and faith and character. And that is discipline. So even though the translators didn't put the word discipline in here, that's what this is. When you're encountering various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces endurance. And let endurance have its perfect result, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing. That perfect and complete, that mirrors the translation of the word discipline. Because complete implies, where did I? There we go. The mature outlook. The broad, enlightened, and mature outlook that is supposed to be the result of being disciplined. I should have used a highlighter. Anyway, since I want to go back to that little definition so many times, I should have highlighted it. Anyway, all right, let's go on to the next one here, Romans 5. And not only this, but we also exult in our tribulations, knowing that tribulation brings about perseverance, and perseverance, proven character, and proven character, hope. See, this discipline thing, this maturing thing, this character development thing was his idea. And it was supposed to happen with our parents. And for a bunch of us, it didn't. Some of you had discipline, but it just wasn't well done. And that's actually great for you because it's better than having none. But for some of you, you've had none. And when you've had none, you still have to go through that process. It doesn't really matter how old you are. So let me just say that one more time, because if you know already that your parents kind of just didn't really do much when it came to correction for you, or they just kind of let you do whatever. If that was you, or maybe they weren't around, or whatever. If you haven't received that kind of discipline as a child, you still have to do that. And that's what we do a lot of around here. And we're always telling you to follow me as I follow Christ. And that's the reason why we do that, is because you haven't received that loving discipline of a mother or a father, hopefully a father, but it can come from both. If you haven't received it, you're not going to be mature and complete. And you have to be mature and complete so that you can persevere. Because it talks about he who perseveres to the end will be saved. So if you can't persevere and you let go of the plow every time things get hard, you're not going to be saved. You're going to let go of the plow when things get hard if you haven't been disciplined. That's how it goes. Jordy always talks about that story with Jack, with the raking leaves or sweeping the deck, I think. You know? It's just like that perseverance to get the job done. I think most of you have heard the story. I won't tell the whole thing. But Jack wanted to give up. And Daddy came in there and helped. He disciplined him through the process. There was no spanking or beating or yelling or anything. He disciplined him through the process of perseverance. You have to have it, or you can't be saved, because you have to persevere. You have to be able to persevere. I can't say that enough. And we can't just throw up our hands in frustration when things don't make sense to us. It's the mature outlook that we're looking for. All right, James 1:12. Blessed is the man who perseveres under trial, for once he has been approved, he will receive the crown of life, which the Lord has promised to those who love him. That's more perseverance, people. And sometimes we're wondering what on earth is going on in my life. Why is it so hard? Why do I have to constantly get corrected? Why am I always doing it wrong? Why do I always respond this way when this happens or that happens? It's because God stuck his finger on that part of you that needs to mature. And he's poking it through every circumstance and person that's in your life. Because he cares about you getting the crown of life. So if you can look at your circumstances and see that there are repetitive things happening in your life, or that you respond in a way that is way out of proportion for the circumstance that you find yourself in, that is an area that needs maturity and character development and perseverance. And so if you can find those things in your life and you can find someone who will parent you through those things, you will have a gift beyond measure because you will develop perseverance and you will receive the crown of life. Don't let go. Don't let go. All right, I'm going to just end with Hebrews 12:1-6. Therefore, since we have so great a cloud of witnesses surrounding us, let us also lay aside every encumbrance, every bit of immaturity, if you will, and the sin which so easily entangles us, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of faith, who, for the joy set before him, endured the cross, despising the shame, and has sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. For consider him who has endured such hostility by sinners against himself, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. You have not yet resisted to the point of shedding blood in your striving against sin. And that's where he then goes into, he disciplines the ones that he loves. Because we have such a great cloud of witnesses, because there are such heroes of the faith that have gone on before us, let's join them in the race. Let's not let go when it gets hard. Let's embrace what he's doing in us as he is trying to bring us into what he originally intended for us to receive as children. But there was also two different words there, where there was a discipline that was for children, and then there was a discipline that was for adults. Discipline isn't supposed to just end when you reach 18. Some of you still have to reach 18 in the discipline area. But even so, he intended that even when children grew up and maybe didn't live with their parents anymore, that he would then step in with his discipline, which was the discipline that he intended for us grown-ups. Because we're not supposed to just stop maturing when we reach adulthood. We're supposed to continue on persevering so that we can receive the crown of life. The reason I think that people have such a hard time with us Christians is that we're constantly letting go of the plow. Fainting. We're fainting when we get disciplined, when things get hard. And instead of growing up and becoming these people with a mature and enlightened outlook, because if we had a mature and an enlightened outlook, I think that people would want what we have. Because what a gift to the world to be mature and enlightened, meaning that you see things from his perspective. That you would then step in and do what he does. It's not like enlightened in the sense that the world talks about being enlightened. It's enlightened in God's terms, which means that it's justice on the earth, his justice on the earth, and we're supposed to be the ones bringing it. But we're just busy fainting sometimes. Justice, ooh. Anyway, that's love looks like discipline. It does. And we need to know sometimes what he's doing so that we can keep our hands on the plow.